The IFB has a network of abusers.
We're taught that men are these uncontrollable beasts.
It's on you as a woman to make sure that you don't make them sin.
I was abused by the same man in 2 separate states. He was my Bible teacher. Aaron Willand was caught with another female student before me. He was finally arrested, but released on bond within a few hours. There's a pedophile walking around.
New reporting is revealing sexual abuse at independent fundamental Baptist churches.
I realized it was happening all over America. A group of us started the Blind Eye Movement to help other victims.
When I was 15, our school principal, Paul Fox, picked me up in his car. He said, "I got you something." That's when I discovered it.
I'm not saying it's wrong for a man to have physical appetites, but I am saying it's wrong when you females show your legs to everybody in the country. You listen to me.
Shut your mouth.
This isn't a normal church, no.
How about a bunch of amens?
It's a cult.
You will find everything from child abuse, sex abuse, to murder. You're exposing an empire.
These people will answer for what they did, if not on this earth, in front of God.
We will not be silenced.
Oh. This was a school picture. So he's my abuser, Paul Fox, and then that's me.
That's crazy.
Brother Fox was my father figure, kind of. Let's see.
How old were you there?
I was 15.
Yeah.
That teddy bear Paul Fox gave me. I had told him this story that my friend, she had this bear that she took everywhere she went. And she's like, "My dad gave it to me." And it instantly like crushed me. And so I told the story to Paul Fox. I said, "I'll never have a bear." So I was in a car with Paul Fox. And he said, "I got you something." I opened the bag and I took out a teddy bear. To me, it was my dad giving me a teddy bear. And he said, "There's something else in the bag." And I was excited, like, something else? Wow. And so I reached down in the bag and I pull out the skimpiest pair of panties I have ever seen in my life. It was this weird position of holding on to this bear that your dad had given you to, here's a pair of panties from the same dad. It was so confusing to me, and it was embarrassing. And then I didn't say anything, and he just started driving, and we didn't talk about it. I think not being close to my mom, not having a good relationship with any father figure, left me vulnerable to any predator that was interested. Predators specifically pick their prey. I was an easy target. So over the next couple of weeks, Paul Fox would ask me, even during the middle of school, "Are you wearing the panties?" And I'm like, "No, what?" Like, it was shocking to me, but it's like anything else in your life where you hear it for the first time and it's shocking, but if you hear it again, it's not quite as shocking. And he kept asking if I was wearing them or had worn them, and eventually it just became another question. He took all the right steps to groom me. I just didn't see it because I didn't know what grooming was, but I was 15. I mean, I had just turned 15. And typically within the IFB, a teenage girl is kind of assigned being one family's designated babysitter. Shortly after he gave me the teddy bear, I became the Fox's designated babysitter, even though I was confused. I went over one night to spend the night at their house because they were gonna get back late. Paul Fox pulled a book off the bookshelf and he handed it to me and he said, "Read this after the boys go to bed." And I said, "Okay." And the book was called The Act of Marriage. Within the IFB, that is the book you're given very shortly before you get married. And it's basically all the physical aspects of having sex in marriage. So that was my sex education. Within a few days, he raped me for the first time. And then that was a repeated weekly thing. Most of my abuse took place in broad daylight in a church van. It was just something I had to do to be loved by a father. As a minor, you obey without question, and you do it with a good attitude. And then there's literally a written rule that says, if you have a problem, don't discuss it with anyone else. Only go to Pastor Goddard. In 1982, Pastor Bruce Goddard started Faith Baptist Church in Wildemar.
I'll tell you in a few minutes how you can get saved in your seat, at the altar, in the porta potty, anywhere you want to get saved. I'll tell you how you can do it. You don't need me to get saved, you need Jesus, that's all.
We attended church there. My first memories of church was in this big red and white circus tent. That's what it was, literally. In Southern California, in 100-degree temperatures, we were in a tent.
Now, you don't get 600 or 700 people out this morning in this kind of heat because I'm impressing you. It's God. Amen.
And that's what they kind of got known for. They got a little famous within the IFB circles for being the church in the tent.
He didn't have enough money to have a building, and he still got all these people.
500, 600, and then at its heyday was over 2,000.
Yeah.
How Faith Baptist ran the church was identical to how Jack Hyles ran First Baptist Church. He was the one who started in the IFB.
In Jack Hyles' mind, Bruce Goddard was one of his golden boys.
Pastor Goddard has a photo of Dr. Hyles in his office. Like, that's his idol to this day.
On my life, rarely would a day go by when I don't think about him, remember something he taught me, read something he wrote, listen to a sermon. You see, you need spiritual leaders.
He's a man that's been an example to every preacher in America. Rise and welcome Dr. Jack Hyles.
You can trace the culture of the IFB today back to Jack Hyles.
22,000 in Sunday school. Over 800 walked the aisle receiving Christ, and over 300 got baptized.
There was no church hotter than First Baptist Church of Hammond. It exploded.
The church itself looks like a corporation, fully equipped with a department store-sized parking lot.
Looking at the congregation was like looking out into the stands at the World Series.
I mean, as much as he hated the rock music culture, he lived the life of a rock star. He would walk into a room, people would throw their Bibles in the air, jump up, run on the pews.
They had pictures of him in their houses. They had mugs with his face on them.
And these students raised $70,000 for your 70th birthday. A wheelbarrow full of cash, just to say we loved all our hearts, preacher.
And so you literally have this competition to see who the most devoted person is. Women take off their wedding rings and put them in the offering plate. People, take out second mortgages on their house and give the money to the church.
Need more proof of the idolatry of Jack Hyles? Exhibit A might be this souvenir. If you can't be Brother Jack, apparently the next best thing is to put on a false face.
You can only do so much before your mask starts to slip.
Thy deacon's wife. Hello, everyone. I'm Ari Povich. Welcome to A Current Affair. The pastor is accused of having an affair with a church member's wife.
If a lie has been told about me that could be told about a preacher.
If someone said something bad about him, it was a lie.
I can't stop the lies!
And more than ever, pastors wanted to know, how do I be like Jack Hyles? His style and his approach is hyper-saturated throughout the independent Baptist movement as we know it today.
I can tell you story after story. Everything in my life that has gone right because I listened to good advice.
Bruce Goddard is one of the ultimate devotees of Hyles.
At some point, my mom started getting suspicious about how close I was to Paul Fox, and so she went to Goddard. Shortly after that, my mom said, Pastor Goddard wants to talk to you. And I kind of had a feeling that I was in trouble. But by this time, at 17, having been sexually abused for more than a year, I was done. This was the night. I'm gonna tell him. Pastor Goddard came and got me, and we walked to his office. And I told him what Paul Fox had been doing to me. And at that point, he asked me if I was pregnant. I said no, and I was embarrassed. He had me go sit with his wife, Tammy Goddard. He said I was gonna stay with her while he went and talked to my mom and my stepdad. After he left, she ripped me up one side, down the other, calling me a harlot and a whore, and how could you ruin a marriage? And I just remember thinking in that moment, I have made the biggest mistake. Why did I say anything? I was in his office for the next 2 days. Those 2 days started the cover-up of this abuse that was done to me. That night, while I stayed with Tammy Goddard, Pastor Goddard went over and talked to Paul Fox. He told him, if you move out of California within 24 hours, I'll rent you a U-Haul. We won't call the authorities. He took that deal. They went back to Indiana, to First Baptist Church, and the authorities were never called. Pastor Goddard told me that if we call the authorities, then the church will be investigated. We could lose the Christian school. We would lose the bus ministry. And I didn't want that. I didn't want those things to. When I came home, after spending all school day in Goddard's office, my mom and stepdad made me weed the hills and paint our tack barn as part of my punishment for being raped. It basically confirmed what I had always known about my mom. The realization that the way you have felt, sorry, that your mom doesn't love you or that you're expendable. I'm right. I was right. I was expendable. So after everything was said and done, I was made to write an apology letter to Paul Fox's wife. That next year was my senior year. I cried myself to sleep every single night. My friends were not my friends anymore because they knew that I had something to do with why the Foxes left our church. Instead of getting punished for the crimes he committed, he got to move to Hyles-Anderson College.
The IFB church has daycares. Then they have Christian elementary schools, high schools, and even unaccredited Bible colleges.
Hyles-Anderson College, I often say, is not a college, it's an army. Our students are not students, they're soldiers. Our faculty is not a faculty, they're sergeants and trainers.
Pastor schools became the breeding ground for cult behavior.
This was like going to your cult's military school.
Every single independent fundamental Baptist church has at least one bus that they run out into the community.
Our bus captain had us going door to door to witness. We said, Amanda, do whatever it takes, get those girls on the bus. Sometimes we'd have goldfish and we'd entice the kids saying, hey, if you come on the bus, we're gonna have people swallow the goldfish live. That's the IFB movement.
Pastor Goddard, he's still the pastor today.
I have no regrets.
My conversation with Pastor Goddard about my abuse took place in June of 1992. Because I didn't want to hurt the church, I tried to just silently carry this story with me. Probably the only guilt I have about this whole thing is that other victims became of it. When my abuse came out, my sister was dating her high school sweetheart, Victor Montero, and they eventually got married. Victor Montero became the youth pastor and bus ministry director at Faith Baptist Church. And that had previously been Paul Fox's job. Because he was dating my sister, he had intimate knowledge about how my abuse was handled. It's like he learned how to victimize other girls. And in May of 2018, my brother-in-law's first victim came forward.
It's a weird place to be the first victim of lots of victims.
April is 7 years older than me, but I knew her and her family from growing up at Faith Baptist Church. Kathy Durbin, she's older than me. I babysat for her kids. My family knew them. We were with their family a lot, birthday parties and stuff. We knew Kathy was treated differently, but we didn't know why. Kathy is Victor's sister-in-law. I remember him being introduced as the new youth pastor at Faith Baptist. As a teenager, I was kind of awkward, to say it lightly. And Victor went out of his way to be like, hey, I'm so glad you're in the teen department. Made me feel welcomed, made me feel special. You felt like, oh, he's cool, he's different. By the time I was going into 8th, 9th grade, then it was escalating to touching and groping, and he was just kept on seeing how much further he could get. Victor abused me from 8th grade until 12th grade. I never came forward. It's hard because you think, I wonder if I would have said something. Victor Montero was a very funny person. He was what I thought was the safe adult there. He was the one that would let us watch YouTube videos in his office with him. It was this weird outlet to feel normal and fun. Grooming is so fast and so slow all at the same time. I can see now where the shift was when the inappropriate jokes or comments would come up, and that led to any and every sexual experience you can think of. I hate that he was my first everything. And that's what that led to. This is someone that I looked up to so much, and that was the only way I knew how to make him happy, how to make your leader happy. Victor asked me if I knew Kathy. I was like, yeah, I actually used to babysit for her. He said, you know why
You know, she's kind of the black sheep. She's not really accepted in things. It's because
20 years ago,
she was having an affair with the youth pastor, the guy before me here. And I'm like, what? Does Pastor Goddard know? Like, do people know? Like, he's like, well, yeah. That's why she's not really included in things.
9 years earlier, he told me the same story as Rachel.
that story about Kathy
Was his way of being like, you know what's gonna happen if anybody finds out. You're gonna hurt my family and you're gonna hurt your family. And he knew that. He knew that I would protect my family and I would protect his family.
And this was years apart that he's using this story.
Same exact story.
To keep us quiet. And it worked. I moved to Indiana to go to Piles-Anderson College. It was my way of getting out because it wouldn't have ended had I stayed.
Yeah. Like Rachel, I left the state and moved to Indiana.
I did not think I would ever come forward, ever.
I mean, he's my leader. He's my youth pastor. I better do what he says.
One of the ways that they really radicalize and indoctrinate teens within the movement is by doing teen spectaculars and youth conferences.
At these teen conferences, pastors have extremely theatrical entrances. One was Jack Hyles' son-in-law, Jack Scott, rappelled down into the pulpit like Mission Impossible.
And then in between all of that cool stuff, it's preacher after preacher after preacher.
This whole world's going.
Lord, and talking about the good things.
And then at the end of the week, you're crying on your knees. Teenage girls saying, my highest calling is to be the wife of one of the pastors. You just get preached at for hours.
There was this one sermon that became infamous. Jack Scott was at a teen event, and he was talking about how God will polish you into being this perfect tool for divine use.
You keep saying no to God. God finally says, I hold the knife, you submit. I hurt, you say thank you.
I can handle it. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing.
Oh, God, that hurts. Oh, God, I'm so tired. I didn't want to have that pain. Oh, God, no.
That's totally outside the realm of normal. And then to find out years later that he was actually abusing a girl and was arrested and convicted of rape was not really surprising if you look back on it.
It went public, very quickly.
After I graduated from Piles-Anderson College, I got married and ended up living in the same town as First Baptist Church of Hammond, and we attended church there.
And I sat in that pew and I watched how that church handled that case. And they protected Jack Scott and they went after that teenage girl. It was horrible. And I sat there and I thought, if I ever come forward, this is what will happen to me.
Up until that point, I was able to push back what happened and just focus on my husband and my kids and my life in Indiana. But how that church protected Jack Scott brought everything to the surface.
April and I lived in the same area. One day, one of our good mutual friends calls me and says, you need to talk to April right now. She just told me your youth pastor molested her when she was 13 years old. What had happened was put on the shelf, never to be dealt with. I did not want to talk about it. I didn't think about it. I never told April what happened to me. And I got to her house and I said, does anybody else know? She said yes, that she had talked to her dad, and her dad immediately went and told Bruce Goddard. the pastor at Faith Baptist Church. And I'm immediately relieved that, okay, the pressure's off me. I don't gotta do anything. It's being handled. And she said, that conversation happened 6 months ago. I don't know how you could do that. I don't know how you could sit on that for 6 months and not do anything.
And I remember telling my dad, I said, I don't think he'll do anything. I said, because you remember Kathy Durbin.
April looked at me and said, I'm just trying to find someone else. I know there has to be someone else. And did anything happen to you? And I said no. Saying it out loud makes it more real. And I didn't want to think it was real.
So I told my dad, I'm gonna go to the police. I called and filed a report. And they just basically said, that's outside of the statute of limitations. There's probably not much we can do.
It was that weekend that I get a text from Victor. I replied, and he said, I know that it was so-and-so that talked to you. And it was not April's name. It was a much younger girl than me. And I'm sitting there thinking, he's gonna get away with this. Mm-hmm. And I can change that, but I don't want to. Yeah. I'm terrified. But then we did.
Yeah.
I called the police. And from my first conversation with Sergeant Pilato, he explained what a pretext phone call is. The victim calls the offender and just talk about things. And it's on a recorded line, and you see what can come out of it. Was I the only one?
There was sex with, wasn't a minor, so.
So I was the only minor, that's it. He admitted to it. He talked a lot. There was consciousness of guilt.
I mean, but that's my fault, so what can I say? I mean, it is what it is.
But I mean, why would you say it's your fault if you don't even remember things happening? I knew this was good. Something was gonna happen. The next day, Sergeant Pilato calls me back and he said, we got a case.
Montana was arrested last week on numerous felony charges related to sexual assault on children that spanned 2 decades. We reached out to Pastor Bruce Goddard of Faith Baptist Church and did not receive a response to our request for a comment.
I think Bruce Goddard was perfectly fine with no one ever talking about it. And so I'm gonna talk about it. April, Kathy, and I are all very separated by age.
Victor and Kathy and Victor's wife, who is Kathy's sister, were all teenagers at the same time.
This shows how long that abuse in that church has gone on.
The common denominator between all of these victims and all of these men is one pastor, Bruce Goddard. He covered up all of our abuse, and somebody has to stop him, or there's gonna be another victim.
Come on, Bubby. It was being fun. Okay, you gotta get in there. You sit. I'm gonna do this. like butterflies?
Butterfly? Are you in a cocoon?
Yeah. You're too baby.
There you go.
My abuser, Aaron Willen, was finally arrested for abusing me in Michigan when I was 12. I've been waiting for a trial date, but it's not just Aaron Willen. I found out that the pastor at Grace Baptist, John Jenkins, knew Aaron Willen was inappropriate with students and did not tell the parents of the school or police. And in a sense, that's worse than the sexual assault. When Sarah Smith's article was released in 2018, the other victim of Aaron Willen's came forward. She was being abused before I was ever abused.
It was me. Aaron Willen would keep me quiet by threatening to hunt me down, kill my family, and then kill me. A church deacon walked into the classroom while Aaron Willen was molesting me. The deacon told John Jenkins, and if John Jenkins, the head pastor, would have notified the church, Ruthie could have been spared.
So spring of 2003, they knew, but I was not abused until summer of 2003. So had they followed proper protocols, my abuse probably never would have happened.
John Jenkins kept everything hush and sent him away quietly.
So then Aaron Willen says that they are moving to Washington State. He lied to my mom and told her that the church didn't have funding to keep him on as a teacher. I now know that it was really because John Jenkins knew that Aaron Willen was caught with Larissa, and in the summer of 2005, 2 years later, I was raped in Washington.
Ruthie would have never gotten on that plane to go to Washington State had this been addressed.
We had a blind eye movement meeting, and we realized that John Jenkins was the common denominator in covering up abuse at Grace Baptist.
I know I needed to take a stand because I need to protect the future girls out there. Who else is going to speak up to protect our girls?
Jenkins, he scared my husband and I into not saying. He used the example that Megan would have to testify in court and she would be traumatized.
None of us.
No, and that CPS could come in and take her kids.
And that's why I'm doing this. For every other victim that is not strong enough and may never be strong enough to say anything, that is why I'm here. Jenkins and Aaron Willen will answer for what they did, if not on this earth, in front of God. We heard that Grace Baptist was holding a meeting regarding their new child protection policy, and we wanted to go and let them know that we're watching.
Yeah, how are you guys feeling right now? We're sitting in the Grace Baptist Church parking lot.
Scary because we know what John Jenkins is capable of, I guess. I'm scared.
All right. Okay, guys.
You're accusing us, the church.
If the blind eye movements are vicious.
I'll bring up a rape is vicious. And you were the catalyst.
After that and some other articles, John Jenkins was getting bad press.
Our investigation into a Gaylord Baptist church is finding more people who say they were sexually abused.
The church did not want to do an interview.
I feel like he must have gotten scared or nervous because shortly after that, his house went up for sale. I guess he was suddenly called by God to go to another church in North Carolina. So the Blind Eye Movement started putting things out there to warn this church and kind of say, you know, you don't want him as your pastor. This is what he's done. Here's articles. We put Google reviews, things like that to kind of warn the church.
we're just thrilled to death to be here. I'm always encouraged when God orchestrates things that we didn't plan. It's sort of confirmation to me God's in it. Amen?
They hired him anyway.
I connected with Ruthie and she came out to California. And we're gonna revisit the places that I was abused by Paul Fox. Being with this group of women who have all survived this horrible thing, it just instantly creates this bond.
Dad, checking their mail.
So, this used to be all dirt roads out here. Paul Fox would just find, we'd be in a church van. Plastered on the side of the church van was Faith Baptist Church. Sometimes we would just drive around and he would park and we would talk. And then sometimes it was sex, so.
It's crazy that no adult questioned why he was taking you alone in a van.
To me, that's very similar to Victor. Like, people said, oh, it's just Victor wrestling the girls. Oh, that's just Victor. The whole system is set up, to me, for this kind of stuff to happen. When I spoke to an investigator for the first time, I really just thought it was me helping the other victims with the piece of their story that I kept popping into. That's crazy to me.
It is crazy. Let's burn it down.
Right? We write it down. Then it started an actual police investigation. And recently I got a call from the DA's office, and she said they were able to find a way around the statute of limitations and still press charges against Paul Fox. I realized that what Paul Fox took from me was my self-worth. And whatever was left, Goddard took. What the DA is doing is handing it back to me because they said that you're worth justice. Even after all this time, 27 years, that you're worth justice.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Test, test, test. Can I have you just say something really quick just so I can see how it sounds?
Hello, my name is Ruthie. Nice to meet you.
I'll just say, Ruthie, welcome to the show. And then you can say, good to be here, or not good to be here, whatever you're feeling at the moment. And then I'll ask the first question and kind of start from there. Right. All right, Ruthie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Glad to finally meet in person. I've been following your story. So for you, where is your case currently?
Unfortunately, my case, the last hearing was November 2020, and he did opt for a jury trial, but we have not heard any new updates since then. And so it almost feels like I have a dark cloud and I'm just waiting for the rain. Like, when is that trial date? When is this going to happen? And so it's definitely frustrating. And, you know,
Aaron Willand was released on bond.
And so to me, every day that he is out of prison and not being held accountable is another victim that could be out there.
One thing that surprises me about your story in general is like how many times he was caught, how many red flags there were that people kind of all out ignored.
Yeah. I have not forgiven John Jenkins. The fact that he could have prevented my abuse, and was I not worthy enough of protection, haunts me to this day.
We have a mutual friend, Kathy Durbin, She has essentially a John Jenkins in her life in Pastor Bruce Goddard, who has also covered relentlessly for abusers within that church. And it's amazing that churches will welcome with open arms predators and pedophiles. Why do you think there's such an attempt to protect abusers over victims?
The pastor's like God, basically. And their word over these victims is always going to be believed.
One of the people that I've had on the show is Amanda Householder. Have you connected with her at all? Is she somebody that's been on your radar?
She's amazing. Her bravery and her story and how much she went through is very inspirational.
When you start looking at the troubled teen industry, these are unregulated prisons for children within the IFB.
There are currently over 100 felony charges against my mom and dad.
Today, the Attorney General announced charges against a Missouri couple who ran a boarding school.
I knew I had to speak up about what was happening. Put a finger down if you were ever starved as a punishment. And that video blew up. If you ever watched your father force another child to eat their vomit,